I'm really glad that you came in today. And again, thank you for sharing your cancer experience and a little bit about the treatment that you've already been through. Just as a reminder, what we talk about here is confidential. There are some limitations to that, as I mentioned earlier. So if I'm concerned about your own safety or you putting anyone else's safety at risk, meaning there's a child being harmed or another person of what we call a protected population, so someone who's elderly or otherwise can't advocate for themselves, or if you're talking about harming yourself. So I just say that so that you are comfortable and understand kind of the limitations, but in general what we talk about here stays here, and it's all about supporting you and getting you the support and the help that you need. So I want to talk a little bit more. I want to ask you about fertility, and if anyone talked to you before you got your treatment about potential risk to your fertility or any potential interventions.
Yeah, no one really mentioned anything of that nature. So I'm, kind of a little upset. I didn't realize that was a factor, and now I'm not sure how this is going to affect my girlfriend. So, hopefully we can, do something about that today.
Yeah. I'm sorry that no one did talk to you early on. Unfortunately, it's rather common, and for a variety of factors. But I'm glad that we're here now and we're talking about it now, and we can certainly talk about sort of your girlfriend and conversations that the two of you might want to have. And of course, you're always welcome to come back and we can talk more about it, and she can come with you. We can sort of work out however the best way to approach that is for you. If it's helpful, I'd like to start just by talking a little bit about what some potential options might be for you, knowing that you've already had your treatment, and that we don't know what your state of fertility, if you will, is now. And so there is a possibility for natural conception. People think of it the old-fashioned way.
Right, yeah.
And we don't know, but that is a possibility. Something also to keep in mind is that about 12% of the population has troubles with infertility regardless of ever having cancer treatment. So we don't know what your fertility was like before treatment, and we don't know what your partner's fertility was like before treatment. So those are all things that we would have to understand some more about before we would know how likely or the possibility of that. But just know that there is a possibility. There are also what we call assisted reproductive technologies. So these are ways of making a baby in other ways, which would mean either using your sperm or potentially a donor sperm if it turned out that you didn't have sperm that could make a baby. And for some of those procedures, you only need one working sperm, one happy, healthy sperm, which can be really, really reassuring for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a third option is adoption. And that's an area that we can also talk about, and I can also provide you with some referrals for agencies that you could talk to get some more information, ask some questions. There are some agencies that are more accustomed to working with cancer survivors as well. So those are all areas that we could potentially talk about. Do you have questions or thoughts about any of that?
Well, my girlfriend is, from a big Baptist family. And she kind of wants to have at least 3 kids. So I would imagine the natural birth would be our main goal, hopefully. Maybe the other 2 options, I'm not sure how she'll feel about that, but if we could try for the natural one, that would be great.
Yeah, and one good way to start is to find out what your fertility does look like now. Okay. And we can also you and I can talk a little bit about how you can start having those conversations with your partner. Have the two of you talked at all about any of this?
Not in great detail. We knew that a family would be something that we would want, but we didn't realize, that the treatment would affect that. Yeah. Because we brought up before, no one really told us. So that's why we came here, and hopefully we can get some results.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that you've been talking to at all about this? This is big stuff.
Yeah, I have a brother that lives out of state, that I talk to, and he kind of helps out when he can, but he's out of state, so.
Yeah. Are there specific areas that you feel like you know you want to talk to your partner about, or you're concerned about talking about?
I'm worried that if we can't do the natural option, that it'll kind of make her and or her family upset. I'm not really sure how they'll feel about any other method besides natural. So that's kind of something that like I'm worried about. I'm sure that she's concerned about as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can have kids, either way, like I'm kind of okay with that. But again, I'm trying to make her and her family happy too.
Sure. And just to sort of help you when you're thinking about this often challenges people's beliefs. And of course, for most people who are planning to have a family, there wasn't a question of how they would have a family, right? And now you're in a situation where we have to start asking those questions. And what I've seen from many other survivors before is that people who, before any of this happened, would have said, I only want to do this a traditional way, and if we can't do this naturally, we're not going to do this at all. Actually came to this place of, well, if the choice is between having no family at all, then adoption or reproductive technology doesn't sound so bad all of a sudden. So just know that I've seen a lot of survivors and partners and families sort of shift in their thinking or be able to align these options with beliefs. Not always, obviously, and you and your partner will have to make those tough decisions about what feels good and what feels right to you.
Sure.
Something else to keep in mind with the assistive technology is that your partner would then be going through some procedures herself as well. So that is something to think about. Again, not to deter you in any way, but just to make you aware of all of the details and kind of what's involved.
No, I mean, that is true. Which I guess kind of has me wondering too, like, especially if we can't go the natural route, about finances, being able to kind of pay for those other options.
Yeah, absolutely. You're really thinking this through, I can tell. There are some national programs that provide grants to young survivors to help them either preserve fertility or to use materials that they've previously preserved. There are also oftentimes some local resources. Some hospitals even have their own funds to support survivors. So if and when we get there, we can talk more about that, and I can certainly provide you with all of that information.
That makes me feel a little bit better.
Good, yeah. It's nice to know that there might be some support out there.
Definitely, yeah.
I'd love to talk a little bit about sort of conversations, you having conversations with Cheryl, and if you have any questions or if there's anything I can offer to help you kind of get those conversations going with her.
Yeah, information on those programs for the financial assistance would be nice, to maybe help sell the other two options if we can't get the natural birth.
Sure. I can definitely provide that. And as I mentioned, I can also provide some adoption agency information if you think you might be interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, might be a last scenario, but like I said, better than nothing. So.
Yeah. A few things that other survivors have found helpful that might be helpful to you in having these conversations. One thing is recognizing that you and Cheryl are probably not going to sit down and have one conversation and then have a plan.
No,
This will be a series of conversations, and the more information you gather, that might be conversations revisited, or if each of you are talking to family members and then coming back together. So those reasonable expectations are always helpful.
Yeah, no, I was thinking maybe it might be helpful to, bring her in for one of the sessions too. Have a dialogue.
I think that's a great idea, and I can certainly kind of be as facilitator or information provider as is helpful to the two of you. And that really addresses one of the other tips that I like to share, is making sure that you all have sort of the time and the space and the capacity to have a conversation. Because obviously it's challenging. You each had a vision of how things were going to go, and I'm pretty sure this wasn't how you had envisioned this.
Yeah.
So making sure that you have a place where you can talk privately and comfortably, and you both feel kind of emotionally ready to have that conversation, can be really helpful.
Sure.
One other tip that I have for you is, after these conversations, is having a little bit of time together. Okay. That's not so serious. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it's going and grabbing a cup of coffee or an ice cream cone together, or, you know, just sitting and chatting about the weather or what you're going to do over the weekend, mm-hmm. but having some sort of transition. Because again, if you're having this difficult conversation and then you both turn around and walk away and have to run to work, or, you know, on to the next thing, it can be difficult on a relationship. So that's another tip. And again, if the two of you come here to have some of those conversations, we can make sure that you have that space, and you'll have the time traveling home or mm-hmm. wherever your next stop is, to just kind of be together,
right.
Which is usually really helpful for folks.
I definitely appreciate all that advice. I think it's really helpful.
Great.
You know, so I guess hopefully she'll be receptive to those suggestions, and I mean, like you said, it's going to be more than just one conversation.
Yeah. Now, the other thing we can do before we have our next conversation is I can refer you to a reproductive endocrinologist, okay. Who can start the process of figuring out where you are right now with your fertility. Right. Is that something that you would be interested in?
Yeah, no, I think that would be really helpful. With making, you know, one of those decisions, like especially if it shows that we can go the natural route, then, you know, everything will go much smoothly. But if not, you know, at least with the information with financial assistance, you know, I'll feel a little bit better with presenting her with the other two options if the first one isn't available.
Okay, that sounds great.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any other questions right now?
No, I guess not at the moment. You know, you gave me some really good information. I think it's just, you know, digesting it and figuring out a way to really have that kind of conversation.
Yeah. Well, I would be happy to talk again and again, and be happy to have you bring Cheryl in. Let me give you my card.
Yeah, that would be great.
And we can figure out a time to have you come back. And in the meantime, I will make sure that you have a referral to reproductive endocrinology, mm-hmm. And I will send over information about the grant programs and also about adoption agencies.
Thank you.
Great. There's that for you.
Appreciate it.